Hello, 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 everyone. I am so glad to have Donata Stroink Skillred. I think I got it right. Did I get it right, Donata?
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
good.
good.
Awesome. I'm so glad to, first of all, have been given the opportunity to be introduced to you and to your company. I happen to be working as a copywriter for another agency on the West Coast, and they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we have a website that's going to be going live. Do you happen to know anyone who writes terms of service, privacy policy?" And I heard like screeching brakes in my mind, and I was like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that, and no one else should either unless they are formally trained at law, but let me find someone for you. So I reached out to a friend of mine who's done some website work for me in the past, and he was like, oh my gosh, you have to check out this website. So I did, and we furthered the conversation, and I've gotten to learn so much just about your company, and it's phenomenal. But also about privacy policy, terms of service, disclaimers, and it's so important. I had no idea. So before we jump into the fun stuff like the legal implications and that sort of thing, which I'm sure everyone has questions about, I just want to know a little bit about you, Donata. Can you tell us who you are and how you got into this?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on here. I know it's not the most exciting topic for a lot of people, but I'm going to do my best to make it fun. I'm also very happy to have found your group as well, as I'm a women business owner too. So it's very cool to see all of these women, working and striving to do the best in their business and sharing advice and tips and all of that. I just think that's really cool. But so I'm a licensed attorney myself. I'm licensed in Illinois and a certified information privacy professional. And I'm the president and legal engineer of Termageddon, which is a website policies generator. So what legal engineer is means that I wrote all of the questions, all of the text, all the answer options, and like the millions of different variations that we have for policies. I'm also the chair of the American Bar Association's e-privacy committee, vice chair of the Chicago Bar Association's privacy and cybersecurity committee, and I was also the chair of the Chicago chapter of the International Association of Privacy Professionals. So my work really centers around privacy policies and keeping track of privacy laws and privacy legislation. And the way that this came about, so I started Termageddon with my husband. And before that, I was in private practice. And I had clients who had websites who needed privacy policies. And so I'd write those for them. And I would obviously charge a lot because I'm a lawyer and I can. And some people couldn't afford that. And it was a very repetitive process. So I found myself asking people similar questions. And then I had all these different templates and I would essentially like Frankenstein things together. And in my mind, I was like, there's got to be a more efficient way to do this. There's got to be a way to automate this.
Mhm.
And that's where Termageddon came from.
Awesome.
Uh, and just keeping in mind that even though I am a lawyer, I did want to note that will not be providing legal advice today. Hopefully everybody can understand why. But if you are looking for legal advice, I recommend speaking to an attorney. The International Association of Privacy Professionals has a great list. So if that's what you're looking for, I would recommend going to iapp.org and they have a directory there that you can check out.
Excellent. So, stepping into what we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks, we are going to be hosting an edu-series here in the women's group, talking about exactly what you do, what Termageddon is all about. So, can you tell us a little bit about what the webinars or the edu-series, each section will talk about?
Yeah, so we're going to start off by talking about privacy policies, right? And a privacy policy is basically a statement that describes your privacy practices. So, like, what information do you collect? What do you do with that information? Who you share it with? Things like that. And we're going to be talking about which websites need to have a privacy policy. So, you'll be able to quickly tell whether your website needs one. What laws require websites to have a privacy policy and what privacy policies should contain and the importance of keeping your privacy policy up to date with new legislation. And then we're also going to talk about terms of service, which is a document that explains the rules of using your website and can help you limit your liability and limit your damages and kind of keep better control of your website. And then lastly, we're going to talk about disclaimers. So we're going to talk about how to limit your liability even further in certain cases if you need to have a disclaimer. And basically, we're just going to talk about how to protect your business, right? So how to protect your business from fines and lawsuits that come with a lack of compliance with various laws.
Excellent. So you talked about privacy policy. Without getting into the really deep stuff, can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what the consequences would be of not having that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're collecting personal information from your website, right? So let's say you have a contact form or an email newsletter sign up form, things like that, very common on websites. You're collecting personal information. And that information is regulated by a variety of different privacy laws that require websites to have a privacy policy if those laws apply to you. And they have like a very specific list of the disclosures that need to be in that privacy policy, right? So basically, what you need to do is figure out what privacy laws apply to you and then have a privacy policy that has those disclosures required by those laws. And if you were to not comply with those laws, there are several different consequences. So the first consequence is fines. So privacy law infringements, the fines start at $2,500 per website visitor whose rights you infringed upon, right? So let's say one of California's privacy laws applies to you and you have 100 website visitors from California, and you have a contact form where they can submit their information but don't have a compliant privacy policy, that fine is calculated as 100 times 2,500, right? So that can really, be a very, very large fine that can add up very quickly.
Absolutely.
And then another consequence is that consumers are actually looking for this stuff now, right? So 5 or 10 years ago, consumers didn't really care, but those attitudes have really shifted. So a lot of consumers are actually expecting websites to have a privacy policy. And if it doesn't, they don't really feel safe and they're going to go to a competitor, right? So one thing that I really want to impart to is that privacy can actually be a competitive advantage, right? So we talk about compliance and fines and all of that stuff, but it can actually be something that makes your customers feel safe when they go onto your website, which I think is also really important.
For sure. So, when we're talking about terms of service, which is a separate topic, who does that apply to, and what consequences of not having that would people face if they don't have it?
Yeah, so generally speaking, a terms of service is not necessarily required by law. Now, it is required if you have subscriptions on your website that automatically renew. So there's a couple laws surrounding that. And then also, if you're a business based in Australia or the United Kingdom, there's certain consumer protection laws that require you to have a terms of service that makes specific disclosures around e-commerce. So like returns, refunds, cancellations, things like that. But if those laws don't apply to you, you actually should have a terms of service anyway, because it can help you get better control over your website, right? So it can help limit your damages and limit your liability. So let's say somebody goes onto your website and gets hacked, or their information is stolen, or they go from your website's Facebook link to Facebook and their information is stolen or something like that. A terms of service can really help limit your liability. It can also help protect you from copyright infringement lawsuits in certain cases. And there's also very little things that people don't often think about that terms of service helps with. So a great example is there's a lot of bots out there crawling websites to try to gain personal information, right? And try to steal things from that website, whether it's your copy or your images or things like that. A terms of service makes it very clear that that's something that's not allowed, right? So they can't do that on the website. So if somebody were to do that, you have a valid claim against them. It can also help you determine where you'd like to resolve disputes with consumers. So let's say there's a dispute between you and somebody using your website, you can choose where to resolve that dispute. So for example, I'm located in Chicago. I can say disputes will be resolved in Chicago versus wherever the customer was located. So I don't have to travel to like Australia or Nevada or other states to resolve disputes. So it's a really great way to kind of protect your business, limit your liability, limit damages, and just really give you that peace of mind as well.
And disclaimers are going to be the third part of our Edu series. Can you tell us a little bit about what a disclaimer is, who would need it, and then if there again are any consequences for not having it?
Yeah, so disclaimers, a great example that kind of tells that everyone knows of what a disclaimer is. If you remember watching those exercise videos in the early 2000s or 90s, and before you started, there's this little message that said, if you're feeling dizzy or like you're gonna die, please stop. That's a disclaimer, right? So websites that need disclaimers, if you're participating in affiliate programs, providing health tips, providing fitness tips, if you're displaying or selling any health products like vitamins, things like that. If you're advertisements, if you have advertisements on your site for third-party products. And then also if you could be providing information that could be seen by others as legal advice. So those disclaimers, the affiliate disclaimer, if you're participating in an affiliate program, usually the affiliate program has a requirement that you disclose the fact that you're an affiliate to the consumer, right? And with the other disclaimers, they just basically help you limit your liability, right? So let's say somebody changes their diet based on what was on your website, or does some kind of an exercise that leads to them getting injured. A disclaimer can really help protect your business in those cases.
Awesome. That's great information. So for people who, let's say they already have a privacy policy or terms of service or a disclaimer or all of the above, do they need to do anything or are they okay?
Yeah, so there's a couple questions there. So first, where did you get those policies from, right? If those policies were written by an attorney who has experience in those particular areas, that's a plus, right? That's a plus on that column. If you got it from some random website where they gave it to you for free, that's a negative on that column because you don't know who wrote it, you don't know if it's been updated, you don't even know if it's compliant, right? So that's could be a problem. And then also when were those policies last updated or looked at? So in the last couple of years, there have been a slew of different privacy laws that have been passed that have required changes to privacy policies and new disclosures. There's also been existing privacy laws that have been amended. So for example, Nevada's privacy law was amended. California's privacy law for its regulations were amended 3 times in the last year. So that's something to look at as well, because if your policies were written in 2015 or something like that, they don't have all the right disclosures anymore. They're out of date, right? So just think about where you got that policy from, whether or not it's been updated, and whether or not you actually trust that it has all those disclosures that you need. So it's really important to just not, if you already have a set of policies for your website, to not just say, all right, I'm great now, because things have changed in the last few years. And even in the last year, things have changed. So it's important to keep those policies up to date.
Which is brilliant. And we won't go in depth here, but one of the brilliant aspects of your software is that it auto updates as policies update. So you literally don't have to worry about it again as long as your membership is up to date. So that's incredible. So Donata and I will be hosting, it's mostly going to be her and her brilliant brain, but we are going to be hosting an Edu series over 3 days, starting on January 24th, again on the 25th, and finally on the 26th, where we will cover in depth all of those topics, the privacy policy, terms of service, and the disclaimers, and why it's so important for you to have them and when it's important for you to have them. So I'm so grateful. I just wanted to do a quick kind of introduction to Donata, let this sit in the group for a little bit so eyes can get on it, because I know that women who have websites, listen, you need to be a part of this. You need to be educated so that you know what your liabilities are as a business owner and not be caught off guard. That's huge. So big thank you to Donata. I appreciate your time, your expertise. And I'm really looking forward to the series. For people who want to RSVP, there is in the events section of this group, if you go to events, It's the only 3 events that are there. So just pop in there, see which one, or if all 3 are of interest to you, definitely we would love to see you there.
Absolutely. I'm very much looking forward to it. And there will also be time for you guys to ask questions too. So please think of some of those. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. But yeah, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, and we will see you all on the 24th. Bye.
Awesome.
We are done.
Good.